How to play chords in 4 parts in close, open and mixed spacing. Exercise 1A, triads with root third or fifth in soprano. Close spacing. Generic chord. Can be played with the same fingers on different keys. Or with fingers. Close spacing with the root in soprano. Close spacing with fifth in soprano. Open spacing, the fifth in soprano. Open spacing, the root in soprano. Open spacing, third in soprano. Exercise 1B, 6 chords in mixed spacing with roots or fifth in soprano. The closest right hand plays both soprano and alto. This is generic. This is dominant in C major. Fingers 2 and 5, 5 and 1. Exercise 1C. 6 4 chords in close and open spacing. In order to play a 6/4 chord, you have to play first tonic triad in correct spacing and doubling. And then take the note from the bass on tonic to the bass on fifth. This is cadential 6/4 chord. Exercise 1D, 7th chords in close and open spacing. This is dominant 7th chord in C major. This is the same dominant 7th chord with omitted 5th. This is generic. most used form of this chord. Other form. Open spacing. This is generic dominant 6/5. Can be taken this way too. 4/3. Very useful. Resolves directly to tonic. This is also very useful. 2 and 4 go to 1 and 5 here. Exercise 2, Connecting Triads. Let's connect main triads. Exercise 2A, connection of main triads, tonic, subdominant, and dominant. Observe the configuration of upper three voices. In order to connect, you can take the bass with finger 2, finger 1, 3, and then 5, 5. Tenor holds the notes. Exercise 2B. We'll try to connect main triads and secondary triads. Apparently, a main triad is related to a secondary triad by mediant, for example. Tonic and submediant triad are a third apart. Therefore, we hold on to C and E and move, and we make this motion. Or tonic and mediant. Connecting tonic to supertonic is tricky. We have to take bass up, and other three voices should move down. same as from tonic to supertonic, but this time it's the other way around. Exercise 2C, all triads in 6 chords. First of all, arpeggiation. Doesn't take much. Tonic 6 chord. Tonic 6 chord. The same thing with dominant. Another connection which is very useful. I have to play fingers 1, 3, 2, 5, 1, 3. Left hand plays 4, 1, 5, 1. This is generic connection. Exercise 2D. Although we always want to have stepwise motion in a melody, sometimes melody has a tendency to leap. There are leaps, leaps of thirds. The third of dominant leaps to the third of tonic. Observe, the first chord is in close spacing, then because of the leap, the second chord becomes in open spacing. Exercise 3, expositional harmonic progressions. Progressions that begin a theme and normally span 1, 2, or 3 measures. These progressions should be circular. They should begin in tonic and end in tonic. The easiest and the most important is generic 1, 5, 6, 1. 4, 1. The same can be used with 5, 6, 5 instead of 5, 6. Oboes. 5, 6, 5, 6, 5. Exercise 3B. This time we'll use 1, supertonic for 2, dominant 6, 5, 1. Fingers 1 and 2 in the left hand, 1 and 3. Then 3 upper voices move up to the next note of the mode. This is 2 for 2. Then right hand retains the 2 notes, and left hand moves a 6 to the left, like that. In mode minor mode. Of course, a very popular opening harmonic progression is voice exchange or 10-10-10. They are quite similar with one voice acting differently. Ten, open spacing. This is voice exchange. Same thing. Observe, only soprano is different. This time, instead of going here, it goes in parallel tenths. A very beautiful opening progression is based upon connection of primary and secondary triads, which produces arpeggiation in the bass. This is called arpeggiation. It's tonic, submedian, subdominant. And then, using the rule that we use when we connect adjacent triads, we can go to G, to dominant, and so all together. As an alternative of harmonization of mi, fa, sol motif in soprano, we can use a beautiful opening progression which involves tonic, subdominant 6, and tonic 6. Exercise 4, resolution of dominant 7th chord and its inversions. Exercise 4a, resolution of the dominant 7th chord to tonic. Generic dominant 7th chord resolves to tonic with tripled root and no fifth, which is called incomplete tonic. Now, incomplete dominant 7th chord resolves into complete triad. Dominant 7th chord also resolves into a submediant triad with double third. Notice double third here. Resolutions of 5-6-5 to 1. Generic. A different inversion. Let us resolve 5-4-3 to 1. This will be exercise 4C. Generic 5-4-3 looks like this. The most commonly used version, and it resolves to tonic like this. This is schematic. This is wide open. Exercise 4D. Resolution of 5/4/2. This is schematic, the most compact. A different version. And this is generic. Which resolves into generic 6th chord. One important detail. You can resolve 5/4/2 into 1/6 with the lips in melody. This time we'll have the lips of 5th. This is the 5th of the dominant chord, and this is the 5th of tonic chord. Exercise 5. Connection of supertonic 7th chord and dominant 7th chord with all inversions. 5A. Supertonic 7th chord in root position to dominant 7th chord in root position. This is schematic 2/7. Very easy. A bass leaps down to the root of dominant. This is incomplete dominant 7th chord, by the way. Tonic. This is generic 2/7. And half diminished in minor. Exercise 5B. Supertonic 7th chord and its appropriate connection to dominant 4/3. Exercise 5C. 2/6/5, 5/4/2. Schematic. And go here. Exercise 5D. Supertonic 4/3, dominant 7th. That's how you can find the bass for. This is supertonic 4/3, and this. Exercise 5E. 2-4-2-5-6-5. Or and then tonic. And this is an extra exercise. This is exercise 5F, voice exchange with inversions of supertonic 7th chord. This is a little bit more complex than the one that you know. 2-6-5, and then there's passing 6-4 chord, and it belongs to submedian 6-4 chord. 6-6-4, and then 2-7. Which goes very nicely into cadential 6-4. Exercise 6, digressions in a major key. Exercise 6A, digression from tonic to subdominant 6 chord via its 5-4-2. Six B, from tonic to dominant, dominant 6 chord via 5-4-2. Exercise 6C, from tonic to submedian, to scale step 6, via 5-4-3. Exercise 6E, from tonic to median. This one is a little bit more complex. You have to start with tonic in open spacing with double third. That's the only way to do it nicely. And then the third is split into these two notes. Exercise 7, digressions in a minor key. We'll begin with C minor and we'll go now to 3. You can digress through a dominant triad. Or dominant 7th chord, then dominant 7th chord has to resolve into a triad which is incomplete. From tonic in minor to subdominant 6 chord, VR 5/4/2. In this case, one extra motion is needed. You're adding the 7th in the bass and raising the 3rd. And that's subdominant 6 chord. Digressing from tonic to dominant is also different in minor. Or if dominant is major. So you're taking generic triad and then on scale step 2, the dominant 7th chord, which is incomplete. E from minor tonic to subtonic, which is also a very useful digression in minor. Tonic, 2 upper notes remain the same. Left hand does. Exercise 8, cadences. This is one of the most important skills. You have to be able to play cadences in order to complete your harmonic progression. Let's begin with 8A, perfect authentic cadence, PAC. The same cadence with preparation with supertonic 6 chord instead of subdominant. This is 2/6. Then, dominant 7th chord and tonic. Instead of 2/6, you can use 2/6/5. And half cadence will be the same progression without the final resolution. So if you stop here, it will be a very beautiful half cadence. There is such thing as an imperfect authentic cadence. It's the cadence in which we don't reach the scale step 1 in melody, or we can use the dominant note in root position. Let me show you a few examples of imperfect authentic cadence. Or stopped on scale step 5. So this is imperfect authentic cadence. Another one. You can use voice exchange. Exercise 8C, deceptive cadence. It's very similar to PAC, with only differences that you should resolve it not into tonic but into a submediant triad with double third, don't forget. Exercise 8D, plagal cadence, which is a very useful cadence at the very end. It's auxiliary. It's also called auxiliary cadence because it's taking place after perfect authentic or imperfect authentic cadence. You're holding 2 C's as a pedal, or you can use major dominant, minor dominant at the end of your period form. Cadences in minor. Be careful with raising the third in the dominant and not allowing for lips on augmented intervals. A beautiful version of half cadence is a Phrygian cadence. It takes place in minor. So this is exercise 8F, Phrygian cadence. It involves tonic, dominant 6, minor dominant 6 chord, subdominant 6, and dominant triad. You can use the suspension in soprano as well. Again. Your tenor goes. And then tenor is doubled with alto. A cadence which was used very often in Baroque music by Bach and his contemporary composers is the cadence in which on the strong beat you see not the dominant, not the cadential 6/4 chord, but supertonic 6/5, and very often half diminished. This is a pickup. Very beautiful cadence. Exercise 9, diatonic and modulating sequences. The simplest one is called descending fifth sequence, which involves going from tonic to subdominant, and that's the link. And then you transpose that link to observe. This is a very unpleasant triad on scale step 7, leading tone triad. If you want to follow the sequence thoroughly, you should just play it the way you have played other triads in minor. And this is supertonic triad, which is also diminished triad in minor. These are diatonic sequences. I'm adjusting the intervals. I'm trying not to leave the diatonic scale steps. If you follow exactly the intervallic content of each link and its transposition, your sequence will become modulating. Then I have to go a fourth up. Oh, and you see I'm already in E flat major, although I started in C major. This will be called modulating sequence. Modulating sequence is easier to play. One other sequence, descending sequence, is also very common and very useful. Since it's the beginning of famous Pachelbel canon, sometimes we call it Pachelbel canon sequence. It's a fourth down and a second up. It's also a version of so-called Romanesca descending bass. Exercise 9C, ascending 5/6 sequences. It's called 5/6 because the fifth is moving to 6 and something like a centipede. Of course, if we do it in 3 voices, it's easy. Like this. If we do this in 4 voices, the 4th voice should leap in order to avoid parallelisms. So my tenor goes. A version of it is with chords in root position. This is a very significant sequence for the style of Handel in Baroque music. It's ascending, and it creates a very beautiful mood in music. Ascending 5/6 sequence. Exercise 9D. Let's try now ascending 4th, descending 2nd sequence, which is also very useful and common. Easy to play. If it is modulating and it's in minor, you could probably recognize it. This is so-called Zales diamond commercial sequence. Exercise 9E, descending fifth sequence with seventh chords. You don't really have to build sequences only with triads. Sometimes you can do it with the seventh chords. And by the way, you can use as a model resolution of 2/7 to 5/7. Or something like this. And tonic. Exercise 9F, chains of dominant seventh chords. This is a very interesting sequence, and it consists of dominant seventh chords resolving into each other. Observe that if I take dominant seventh chord and resolve it into incomplete triad, I can turn this into a dominant seventh chord which is incomplete by adding the seventh, and this will resolve to dominant seventh to a triad which I can also turn into dominant seventh chord and resolve it like this. Or I can do it right away. Dominant seventh chord, finally, in this set of exercises number 9, I suggest exercise 9G, which is called omnibus. This is another sequential, I would say, party trick with dominant seventh chord. We take dominant seventh chord, for example, from A, and as you know, we can do the exchange of seventh and the root. This is dominant seventh chord, and this is dominant 4/2. Okay, so we can hit chromatic passing tones, which is an octave. So, and then if you keep moving in the same direction, you will get into another dominant seventh chord. One more time. Then find the root and the seventh in this dominant seventh chord. There will be bass and alto. Start moving them. Okay. Now this is the root and the seventh. And this progression works both ways, inward and outward. That's why it's called omnibus. It's used in 19th century, late 19th century music extensively.
Greetings, dear students. I'm recording now a video tutorial 4, which contains modulations to closely related keys. After a video tutorial 3 with digressions, it's logical to continue the study of modulation, which is a very important aspect of harmony. In the 19th century, some teachers would say that musical form is modulation, because you simply cannot create a large-scale musical form. Well, not only large, but also some smaller forms requires significant knowledge of modulation and modulatory techniques. This exercise, as is established in my video tutorials, is intended for your practical acquisition of the skill. So in the following set of videos, please learn how to write, how to create modulation at the keyboard without the reference to notation. I would like to describe the technique which I offer. It's not something entirely new. However, there are some elements that I have added to standard method of modulating. And you'll have a separate file, which is my short version of my article about techniques of modulation to closely related keys. So I'd like to show you now. So the points. In order to modulate, one has to establish the initial key by means of TSGT cycle. Here I would add that it's not even useful to play modulation in schematic form, something like this. Well, this may look like modulation, but it's taken out of context. So I suggest that you implement your modulation into a progression in a period form or in sentence form, into your template, in other words. So one way or another, it has to be established by the TSGT cycle, maybe once or twice. Then you have to find the pivot chord. You have to calculate, find the chord which is common between two keys. I suggest not just taking it, but introducing it by means of digression. For example, if you have to use scale step 6 triad and scale step 6 submedian triad as a pivot chord, I suggest that you reach that like this by beautiful optimal voice leading pattern, a digression from tonic to submedian. And then you'll use this chord as a pivot chord. But then once, well, this is, for example, 3 in F. This is 3 in F. I'm going to F major. Yes, it is scale step 3 in F, median, but from this chord to get to dominant and tonic or to cadential 6/4 to cadence in the F major is quite difficult. It's 3. So I suggest that you should use another chord, intermediate chord, between pivot chord and a cadence in a new key. So pivot chord will be marked on my graph in blue, and that additional voice reading sonority, which sometimes can be very complex, and is marked in green. And of course, the last thing that you should do, you should establish the new key by means of a cadence. Well, cadence in the sense, in the context of my method is TSGT cycle. You circumscribe, you identify a new key by providing a complete functional cycle. Only this way we will understand that we have landed in a new key. So let's figure out how to calculate the pivot chords. From any major key, there is a possibility of modulating into scale steps 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, or 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The scale step 7 forms a diminished triad, and you know it is excluded from the list of our goals. From any minor key, there is a possibility of modulating into scale steps 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There is scale steps. Try it on scale step 7. In C minor, there is beautiful B flat major triad. But the scale step 2, scale step 2 forms diminished triad, and thus it is excluded from the goals of modulations in the minor key. The pivot chord should be neutral in both keys, since if it has a strong tendency to resolve into tonic of one key, it would be difficult to reinterpret it as a chord in another key. For this reason, I suggest that we should not use the dominant in the initial key as a pivot chord, because it has a tendency, it will go, it's very difficult to reinterpret it, so it's not desirable. Therefore, the pivot chord should be on scale steps 2, 3, 4, or 6 in the new key. These are neutral sonorities, very commonly used in modulation as pivot chords. So it belongs mostly to a predominant or subdominant function, and sometimes it can be a tonic of a new key, but it's less desirable. So. In order to choose the pivot chord, we need first to find out the names of the triads that are found on the scale steps 2, 3, 4, or 6 in the new key. So you'll see I've prepared a little column in the table for that. Some of them will be disqualified, marked in red in the tables below. Due to diminished quality or lacking of such inflection of the triad in the original key. For example, if it looks like in F major there is a G minor triad, well, it cannot be a pivot chord because in C major we don't have B flat, so it's not a viable pivot chord. After the pivot chord, it makes sense to modify the new subdominant function with a more graceful connection to 5/6/4, as I mentioned already, using 2/6/5, 2/6, 2/4/3, or 5/5. These are those chords in green which make connection from pivot chord to a new cadence more graceful. So now let me show you the table for major and for minor. And in the next video we will start our exercises. So look at this table. In major, from C, I started with C major, you can transpose all this. So from C into 2 on the left side. You see this on the left side, there's from C into 2. So which means that from C major to D minor on the right side. So this is a Roman numeral notation of progression which I suggest. Let's look at the D minor. D minor is the key, the goal key for modulation. Scale steps 2, 3, 4, and 6. Very quickly. Scale step 2 in D minor is E diminished triad. Well, it's in red, so it won't work. 3 is F major. 4 is G minor. Well, it has B flat. We can't use it. And 6 is B flat major triad. So I have to regretfully suggest that we can only use F major as a pivot chord when moving from C major to D minor. So good. F major will be, as it says in blue here. In C major it is 4. And in D minor it is 3. So again, from 3 to get to this cadence is kind of difficult. So I suggest that you use 2/6 after that. Oh, it didn't get marked in green. Well, that's my mistake. All others will be marked in green. So first we have to digress from C major to F major. And again, this is in video tutorial 3. See, this is, and now we are in 3 and it's expressed in the 6th chord, and we are heading towards this chord. See that? You know what I suggest? To use 2/6. And you see? Well, actually, it should be 2 half diminished 6. No, 2 diminished 6. Yeah, 2 diminished 6. So this is schematic form. Now let me show you how to play this inside the period. You have to know where these things belong. This is the last cadence. It should be in measure 7. This should be 7 and 8. I'll play my template in 2/4. Very easy, 8 measures. So The antecedent goes as normal, no modulation involved. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And 4 and 4, it's a place for half cadence. 5, 6. So 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. So you see, I have very little time to play all this progression. I begin in 5 and 6 on measures. In measure 6, I have to be there already at the pivot chord 6, and I have second part of measure 6. For that, I'll use that chord and 7. So all together. This is successful presentation of modulation from tonic to supertonic using pivot chord F major triad, which is subdominant in C major and mediant in D minor, using intermediate supertonic diminished 6th chord and the cadence in the new key, and all fit into 8 measure long harmonic progression. Thank you very much. Video tutorial 4, exercise 1A, modulation from C major to D minor. The pivot chord is F major triad for C major, which will be 4 in C major and 3 in D minor. Digression to 4. 4. In this situation, the 4 is represented by its first inversion. Intermediary chord, cadential 6/4 chord in D. This was schematic presentation. And now let's see at actual modulation within 8 measure metric period in 2/4. Video tutorial 4, exercise 1B, modulation from C major to E minor. Apparently, if you look at the right column, there are 2 possible pivot chords, A minor triad and C major triad. Well, C major triad is tonic in the initial key. So I'll provide both. Modulation through pivot chord, which is C major triad, and the pivot chord, which is A minor triad. So in both cases, well, pivot chord is C. So I don't have to go anywhere because it's just a tonic triad. But then I have to move this to cadential 6/4 chord in E minor. Look at this. If I just connect this, this will be a 6th triad. And if I correctly doubled and spaced it, it will have double root. And so I need to do something else with that. So That's why I need that chord in green, intermediate chord. This is my invention, well, it's my addition to the theory of and technique of modulation. I suggest that after reaching this pivot chord, which is submediant triad in E minor, we have to bring this chord closer to the cadential 6/4 chord. What is resolving very well into cadential 6/4 chord in general? 2/6, 2/6/5, 2/4/3. So in E minor, this is half diminished supertonic 7th chord. So it's favorite 2/7 in minor. And look at this, there's a note C in this chord. So if I had that C here, like this, then it will be very easy for me to bring it to the note, the dominant note. Something like this. This is 2/4/3 in E minor. And now look, go back, the C major triad. Look how nice it is. Beautiful voice leading and no problems. So all together, I have reached the pivot chord, and then I put 5 half diminished 4/3, resolve it. And now this was schematic form, and now let's put it in the form of period. Something like that. A different version of the same progression is modulating through the pivot chord, which is A minor triad. So in this situation, I'll have to reach that from C, and this is A minor triad. Now it will take this transformation. I can do it like this. This is A minor triad, and this is half diminished 6/5 chord in E minor. So all together, this was schematic form, and now in 8 measure standard harmonic progression in period form. This is measure 6 and 7. Later on, we will learn how to alter that, something like that, how to use non-chord tones and passive tones. Just be patient. Let's learn it the way it is first. So this completes exercise 1. B, a modulation from C major to E minor through 2 available pivot chords, C major triad and A minor triad. Video tutorial 4, exercise 1C, modulating from C major to F major, from scale step from 1 to scale step 4. This modulation is not happening often in the form, but we still have to be able to do that. Look at the right side, G minor triad is not working, it has B flat major triad is not working, so we have 2 triads common between C major and F major. The A minor triad and the D minor triad. So first let's begin with A. I will digress to A. And now I in F major, and this is a triad on scale step 3 in F major, as you see. And of course, to make it smooth and nice, moving into cadential 6/4, I would use, this is 3 and this is 4. How do you connect adjacent triads? Bass moves in this direction, up. This, two voices move in opposite direction. And they keep moving doing this. See how nice it is? Four, cadential, tonic. This is schematic form. Period. This is measure 5, 6, and 4. There's another pivot chord, which is a D minor chord. If you remember, we digressed from tonic to supertonic by means of diminished 7th chord, this way. See that? So when this is tonic, we go to this, and this is, oh God, this is beautiful. This is a pivot chord. This is a pivot chord, and in F major, apparently this is a submedian triad. In F major, this is triad on scale step 6. To make it smooth, to connect it to cadential 6/4 chord, I'll do this. So 2 notes in left hand stay. Left hand stay, and this is, as it says, it's what is it? 2, 4, 3, all together. So we continue with our exercises. This is video tutorial 4, and exercise 1D. We are moving from C major to G major. This is a very common modulation happening everywhere. It definitely can happen inside the period, especially if the following segment, such as small B section or transition, begins in the key of the dominant. So we prepare the key of the small B section or the key of transition, the key of subsidiary theme, pretty much. So it's very nice to anticipate the next segment by ushering a new key. And since C major and G major are very closely related, these are the closest keys, we have a choice of, let's look how many pivot chords. Okay, A can be a good pivot chord. B, now in G major, scale step 3 is B minor triad, but it's B minor triad, it has F sharp, so it won't work. But C major triad and E minor triad work very well. So we have 3 pivot chords. Now, C used as a pivot chord is very easy, but of course I can go like this. See that? So it's very simple. I suggest some kind of elaboration after a pivot chord, for example, and then turning into 2, 4, 3 at least. Well, I'm teaching you not just some kind of schematic, abstract concepts, but something which is related more to musical realization in real musical compositions. Therefore, I suggest that you use something more advanced than just the minimum structure that is possible. How about A? If pivot chord is A, very interesting. This is pivot chord. And look, a chord in green is suggested as 2-7. In G major, 2-7, let me remind you, without moving too far away, that's 2-7. So you can only move this alto from A to G. Sounds good. And then, so this is one way of doing this. And the E. E is tricky. So first of all, you have to get to the triad with doubled third, in soprano and alto double it, and then that's my favorite way. And then you'll have to regroup. So take alto from doubled note with soprano. That's a chord in green, which is, see. So let me play all three of these in period form. This is pivot chord C. Now will be pivot chord A. And now let's try the pivot chord E. By the way, if you're bored with a regular 2-4-3 chord, you can turn this into German augmented 6 chord. Because German augmented 6 chord is nothing but supertonic 4-3 chord or subdominant 6-5 chord, depending on notation. So this was exercise 1D, modulation from tonic to dominant. We have 3 pivot chords, 3 available pivot chords. This is the last exercise in the group dedicated to modulating to closely related keys in major. Next folder will be modulations in minor. So now we have to try to modulate from C major to A minor, which is also very common, especially in development sections, in middle sections. So we have to be able to do that. C and A are all very, very closely related. This is the same key signature. Therefore, if you look in the right to my column on the right, only B minor triad can be used as a pivot chord. But the D, F, and C, they all work. They all work. So in order to go from C major to A minor, you can reach D minor like this, and then I suggest to turn this chord into actually it's not even to diminish this to have diminished 6/4 chord. That would be even better than it's written here. Because just you take one note, it's diminished fifth, so it's not augmented. It's also if If you go to F major, I want to bring this F major to root position like this. See that? And now I can do this. So this allows us to expand, to create beautiful counterpoint of outer voices. And of course, if you take C, it will be 3. C. And that's where it's very easy to use. Well, if C is a pivot chord, and it is 3 in A minor, isn't it? It's 3. Again, pivot chord, which is mediant in the new key, by itself doesn't help. Even if you reach that, it's still, you have to connect it to the dominant in the new key. So I suggest like this. So that chord in green is very, very important here. It's absolutely necessary. So let me do it in the 8 measure period form. Now with F as the pivot chord. And the last one, pivot chord, is tonic triad in C major. You have to manipulate a progression so that you will be on time with pivot chord business, which is definitely measure 6, and the cadence in the new key exactly on the strong beat of measure 7. You have to be there on time, and that will make your progression tight knit and very convincing. It will be based on even odd structure, easy to comprehend. If you shift, if you add one chord to your progression or shift the metric grid, as I mentioned earlier, it will make comic effect, or you will see some raised brows in your listeners. Thank you very much. That's the end of exercise 1D.